I guess we know who Loki takes after now. Hello, how's it going everyone? This week we have another great chapter of One Piece. But before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Now without further ado, let's get right into it. First, of course, we have the cover page for this week, where we see that Yamato has apparently given Kawamatsu the Amigasa hat that Otama made for him. And that's about it, so let's move on to the main chapter. We start off this week's chapter by picking up where we left off in the last chapter, with the giant warrior pirates as well as Luffy and the gang getting ready to make their way back up to the Sun World. And we see that apparently they are going to leave Gerd behind in order to take care of the injured Loki, and Chopper is also going to stay behind because he can't leave the injured Mr. Ya alone. But as they are leaving, Mr. Ya calls out to Luffy and gives him a tip about using his supreme color of haki in order to hurt the Holy Knights. And he also says that they are not in fact immortal. Apparently the tip that Mr. Ya gave Luffy is also helpful to Loki, who then also offers to go to the Sun World with them. Harald refuses his offer, and at the same time, we finally get a confirmation through Mr. Ya that Zoro does in fact have the supreme color of haki as well. And apparently Luffy already knew this, and he is shocked to find out that Zoro didn't know anything. Mr. Ya also reprimands Zoro for being so unaware about his own capabilities. Harald and Loki continue to argue about joining forces with each other, with Harald also revealing that apparently Loki had tried to join up with the world government at one point as well, which is why he can no longer trust him in a fight against them. Meanwhile, the rest of Harald's crew are telling them to hurry up so that they can all go up and save the Sun World sooner. At which point, Luffy comes up with a solution to resolve the situation between Harald and Loki, which is to have Loki join his crew, since that way he will no longer be involved with Elbaf any longer, and will basically be Luffy's responsibility from that point onwards. Zoro and Sanji don't want Loki to join the crew. In the case of Zoro, it's because Loki is just too big for their ship, and meanwhile Sanji is concerned about the amount of food that Loki probably eats. Harald decides to refuse Luffy's proposal, but then Mr. Ya chimes in and tells him to accept it. Harald is shocked by this because of all the crimes that Loki has committed, including the murder of their father, King Harald. At which point Mr. Ya reveals that apparently on the day King Harald died, he and Shanks actually also went to the castle, and even though they didn't see the whole thing, they did manage to see what happened at the end. After he says that, Harald tells the rest of his crew to go on ahead of him so that he can stay back and listen to Mr. Ya's story. And Luffy also decides to stay back after finding out that it also involves Shanks. He also tells Zoro and Sanji to go on ahead without him. And now at this point, we get a flashback from 14 years ago, where we see that on the day of the incident, Loki and Chief Yarul were apparently summoned to the castle by the king. But when they got there, they saw that the king was being stabbed by his own warriors for some reason. They are of course shocked by this. Meanwhile, we cut over to Scopper's house, where we see Scopper and Shanks hanging out and catching up after 10 years. And during this conversation, Scopper asks Shanks if he knows the king, to which Shanks answers that back when he was in Marijoa, he actually met the king once and they apparently got along. But then he says that he actually has something to ask the king that he wasn't able to ask in the Holy Land for some reason. At which point we get some narration about the massacre that is occurring in the castle, and we see some scenes of the massacre. At which point the narration continues into another further flashback from 109 years ago, where the narration explains that at that time the giant warrior pirates were the biggest fear in the world, and that was not just because of them, but also because of the fact that their king, King Harald, who had ascended to the throne at a very young age, would also act like a ruffian and would go around causing trouble. And that's where the chapter ends. All in all, this was a great chapter of One Piece, where we finally got confirmation about Zoro's conqueror's haki, as well as some insight about what happened during the incident 14 years ago, as well as some more insight about what kind of person King Harald was during his younger days. Having said all that, I can't wait for the next chapter, so I guess I will see you whenever that comes out. Once again, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Bye bye.